Ben. How are you doing today?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, John. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. So, Ben, today we're going to be talking about Our Living World, the docu-series that it's narrated by Kate Blanchett as well. It will be releasing on April 17, 2024. So, how excited you are that we're close to the release?
Very excited. Very excited. It's been a long time in the making, this show. So I think that we first came up with the idea back in 2018. So
Oh,
so it's
wow.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I wanted now that you bring that up, I wanted to ask you, why did it take so long to make this docu-series happen?
So there's a number of reasons. First of all, the research phase takes quite a long time. I think we probably spent nearly 2 years with a small team, tapping into scientists and research all over the world, in various fields, from animal behavior to climatology to geology to meteorology. Trying to find out what the new research that was going on and what those new stories are, and then trying to sift those down into stories that would help us tell our bigger story, which is about the connectivity of life and the physical processes of the planet. So, there are a lot of stories out there, but the ones that really help us to illustrate the bigger story that we want to tell, harder to nail down. Um, and that's before you even start thinking about how do you go out there and film this stuff. We were filming in lots of places around the world. We were filming during some of the travel restrictions that were put in place during the couple of years of COVID lockdowns. So having to tap into local crews in different parts of the world and get them up to speed with the stories that we're trying to tell and the way that we want to visualize them and all that sort of stuff. And then waiting for the animals to show, which can take which can take quite a long time, as you can imagine.
One of the things that I noticed of this docu-series is that not only you connect the connection between life and our world, but as well how it affects our environment.
Mhm.
There's very key moments that it explains like how important this is for the environment and for our world in a whole. Was the direction of the story or the narrative of this docuseries to not only show people how important are these animals or the life cycle, but as well how important these animals and these life cycles are important for our environment and for our world to maintain life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the if you start with the realization that no one species on Earth can survive in isolation by itself, that we all rely on other species, and that those species in return rely on other species, and those species rely on other species, you start to build up this idea that there's a network of life, and that's fairly basic biology, that there are food webs and there are webs of symbiosis and so on and so forth. But then when you realize that these animals and their behavior is not only affected by the environments in which they live, but also in turn has an effect on those environments, then you start opening up not just a single flow of cause and effect going one way, but a whole web of mutual interdependence, and that environments are as shaped by the creatures that live there as they in turn shape the creatures who live in them. So that idea that this connectivity works both ways, I think was absolutely key for the series, and understanding how that works to bring about stability and positive benefits, positive outcome. Um, but also how if you start chipping away at it and taking pieces out of that jigsaw, removing threads from that web, how the knock-on effects can be amplified through the system. But then the third point is that, okay, if we understand how it works, then we can also start to see how some small changes and small beneficial actions at one part of the system can have amplified positive knock-on effects throughout the system. So yeah, absolutely, that was part of an underlying part of the whole storytelling.
And Ben, wanted to know how you being the producer of this docuseries, how connected or how much you were involved while in the, I would say, the final production process, when you're editing and everything, how were you involved in that section of the docu-series?
Yeah, very intimately. All the shows were edited. We're based in Bristol in the UK. All the shows were edited here in 4 rooms that are next to each other on the same corridor, if you like. And so the team, the team who are working those edit suites to craft the pictures and to shape the words and the narration and the scripts and the storytelling. We were all a small team, but all working very closely together to kind of pull those stories close together and tell them all in tandem, because there are 4 films in this docu series, but they're 4 chapters of the same story. So we had to know episode 1 needs to know what episode 4 are doing, episode 2 needs to know what episode.
Okay.
So it was a close collaborative team effort.
And were you able to to pass time or be on the how do you say it, on the recording booth or in the recording sessions with Kate Blanchett?
Yep, yeah. I was there with Kate when she recorded the narration, which was fantastic. Yeah.
And how is it working? How was it working with her?
Well, she's brilliant. I mean, Kate is obviously she is one of the best actors of her generation, which which is a real treat to have before anything else is kind of thrown in. To work with somebody like that is, she brings a touch of world class to proceedings. But she's also very tapped into this sort of what's going on out there in the world. She has a podcast that she addresses, kind of hope in the face of climate anxiety and some positivity around our changing climate. And also personally, she's a beekeeper, so she's tapped into the interrelationships between species out there. So she's knowledgeable about the subject matter. She brought a lot to the stories we were telling, but also in terms of her performance, which really helps draw us in.
And wanted to know what is the process on picking the narrator, because I know that for voice acting there's auditions, but in documentaries, is it the same thing? Do you go through the audition process, or do you had already somebody, or do you have Kate already in mind for this docu series?
I think in this case, in the back of our minds was Galadriel wandering around the forest, the elven forests. And you've seen some of the visualizations in the show. It's almost magical.
Yes.
We're dealing with kind of a touch of magic, with nature's magic in some of these sequences. So, I think Kate was always there in the back of our minds, as someone who would really fit that, the stories that we're trying to tell, and we were lucky enough to be able to work with her.
And what is something that our living world brings to the table for our viewers when they go ahead and start seeing it in release?
So I think there's a number of things. There's some amazing intimate access to animals doing very cool things. There's that very cute baby chimpanzee. There are some frogs doing ridiculous things in the Danube Delta. There's a rhino that walks through towns. There's there's some amazing animal behavior moments in this show that by themselves are well worth tuning in to have a look at. But for me, the big thing, the thing that makes this show stands out for me are those moments, those wow moments, when you realize that, hang on, forest elephants in Gabon doing what forest elephants do has an effect on the forest in a way that it makes the trees grow bigger and they capture more carbon than a forest without elephants in them. Or wolves chasing baby reindeers around the Arctic somehow affects the weather systems thousands of miles to the south. It's these wow revelations of the fundamental connections that makes our planet work. That for me is the biggest take home from this show. That's what you should do. That's you might tune in for the cute baby chimpanzee, but hopefully that's what you take away.
And being the fact that this is a four-part docu-series,
Hmm.
that's a lot of footage to go through and a lot of editing. But I wanted to ask Ben, what would be your favorite moment out of all these four episodes?
That's a very difficult question to answer. I've got lots of favorites. I've talked about the jumping frogs. I really like the jumping frogs, just because they're fun, and they look great. And a frog gets his meal in the end. Um, but they all have their each of the episodes have their standout moments. But as I say, for me, the bits that really make me excited are those moments of revelation. So the moments where it's not just the animal doing the cool animal thing, but where we realize that, wow, that's connected to the whole of the rest of the planet.
Okay, that's really amazing. I think that my favorite part is the one that you mentioned with the rhino going through
Mm.
the town. I love rhinos personally, so that when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's mesmerizing. I wanted to ask, being the fact that this is a very science based documentary, it talks about a lot
Yeah.
of biology and
Mm.
the life cycle. Have yourself or anybody else that was working on this docu-series have thought to bring this docu-series, like make like a little, I don't want to call it like a press screening or screening or personal screenings, but have you guys considered to make like a program like that, schools can see at least the first episode beforehand, like that's maybe science teachers can use this as a tool for future classes?
Yeah, I don't. That's not something that we on the production side have been involved in. One thing to talking about the educational side of the educational aspect of what we've been doing. We have, however, been working as we've been filming these sequences. We've worked quite closely with various scientists who are our universities and research programs and research projects. So we have collaborated with universities and scientists working there across a number of sequences, and we've shared our footage with them, and they get to tie that into the papers that they're writing or the teaching that they're doing. But we haven't collaborated on a primary or secondary school level at the moment. No.
Okay. And was there, besides COVID, that was, I imagine, one of the most major challenges
Hmm.
that I would see during the time frame that you mentioned at the start? Were there any other challenges while filming?
I think there's, filming wildlife inherently brings challenges because you know what happened last year, but you don't know what's going to happen this year. So the animals aren't necessarily going to turn up. The weather's not going to be great. The visibility in the underwater, sequences might be awful for weeks and weeks on end. Um, but one of the things that, if you speak to anybody who makes, tries to film wildlife, makes wildlife shows around the world, at the moment, is that they will tell you that the planet is becoming less predictable and the weather systems are becoming less predictable, and things that would happen reliably at certain times of year no longer happen reliably. And we all see this. We all know that the world around us is changing. So those are obviously challenges for people trying to film in wildlife today, but also one of the key motivators for us to make this series, to kind of reveal that actually there's a reason for some of these changes that we're seeing, and that they are connected with everything else that's going on out there.
Okay. And that yeah, that's something that I did see while on the docuseries. There is a meaning behind all of these that all of the information that you're seeing. And this would be my final question for you today. If you could describe our living world in one word, what would it be?
Connected.
Connected? That's really interesting word. I like it because it connects everything as how when it starts and when it ends. Ben, thank you very much for giving us the time to talk about Our Living World that is going to be released on April 17th. Thank you very much for everything, and I hope everybody enjoys the docu series as well as I did.
Thanks, John. Nice to talk to you.
Same here. Bye bye.